Hey guys, welcome to the video. Today we're going to learn how to build a data entry template using the new template wizard found here on the QRlogix Software dashboard. We'll walk through the process step by step for building a fairly complex microscope slide label template. I encourage you to follow along in your system. We'll cover most of the important features, and I'm confident that knowing this information will really help you get the most out of your automated labeling solution. Before we start with the new template, let's jump over to our template library and look at an example. Here in the template library, we have options for data entry templates and file drop templates. This video is focused on data entry templates, so we'll go ahead and click on that. And now we've got a list of different pre-built templates that are ready to print. We've got templates for tissue cassettes, we've got a template for a transport container jar, and then we have microscope slide label templates. Slide 1 and 2 templates are 5 lines of free text, just basic printing on a slide. You can edit and alter these and customize them to be your own any way you'd like, but they're good starting points. Slide CS1 is a control slide template. H1 and H2 are histology best practices. H3 is histology batch printing by case, sample, and block. M1 is a Mohs template. Template P1, that's for stain protocols. So if you want to do, or stain panels, that's often referred to. So if you want to do panels, it's a good one to at least look at and kind of see how they work and maybe even just customize to fit your needs. And then R1 is a research template. For the point of this, we're going to take a look at template H1, which again is histology best practices. So I'm actually going to pin it on my dashboard and then click done. And then when we could jump back to the dashboard, we're going to find it listed here. So let's take a look at our histology 1 template. Go ahead and click the little drop down and then scroll up to open. And what I've done in advance, I typed in some data and then I saved it so it would be retained in these fields. I did that to save the trouble of me typing while you sat there and waited for me to finish. But this shows you now with data what that slide would look like. And I can go ahead and print it. It's going to send it through here to our print to images folder. But because I saved it, the data is going to repopulate every time. I'll show you in just a second how we can optimize this, and then we'll get back to template building. But this is an idea of histology best practices. We've got our prefix, accession or case number, sample, block number, and slide number. And then we've got the patient name and the stain. That's what CAP and CLIA refer to as histology best practices labeling. The idea, according to their documentation, is that a pathologist anywhere in the world could pick up a microscope slide, and if it's labeled this way with this format, they can now read that slide. And so that's the goal, is to get these diagnostic histology labs all using at least as close to this format as possible. The other information is free text, or what's allowable by the lab, so you can put anything you want. Tech initials, doctor, you name it, that's for you to decide. If you want to put the date that it was processed, that's encouraged, but not any way means required. And then of course a barcode, that's an option too, but certainly beneficial potentially for storage, archiving, access later on, and potentially identification in the event something happened and we lost the patient name or accession number. So, but anyways, that's histology best practices. So we're going to build a template similar to this, but we're going to spice it up a little bit. We're going to use drop-down boxes for the prefix, for the stain as well, and then we'll do some sequential numbering and lettering, which will give us a pretty complex template, but it's not that difficult. So if you follow along, you should have a really good idea of how to build these templates on your own. So let's click back to the dashboard, and then we'll go to our data entry templates new button, and we'll begin the process of building a template from scratch. So here we've got our pop-up, and the first thing it's asking is whether we want to build a template for a slide or cassette label. So in this case, we're going to do a slide label, and we'll go ahead and click Next. Now we need to select the counter type. So if you want individual slide numbering, where you would have the actual slide number 1 through 5 or levels 3 through 6, that type of numbering, you could select the to and from or the from to counter here. If you're going to do sequences of letters and numbers, you may not want that. And in this case, we're going to do exactly that. We're going to do some sequences. So I'm going to go with this for now. But if you're not using sequential lettering and numbering in your template, and even if you are, but if you're not, you probably want to go with to from counter. But for this example, we'll go with copies. So I'm going to select Next. Now I need to give it a name. So let's go with my template, and we'll call it histology. So I'm going to go ahead and save it. And what it does now is it jumps to the form builder area. So we've got our counter, which is typically at the bottom of the template form. And then we have our fields that we can add. So at the top, we have text field. Text fields are the most common. That's letters and numbers, and typically should be your default go-to field, even if you're typically going to do just letters or just numbers. Now, the only time you would want to do a numeric field is when you're definitely only going to do numbers. It will not allow you to add letters. So in the case of, say, an accession number that you want to auto-increment, that makes a lot of sense, because by having a number field, you can do that. You can select auto-increment. What that means is when you hit print, this is going to automatically repopulate at 1002, and then you hit print again, 1003. So it auto-increments after each printing. Additionally, you could do leading zeros. So if you wanted, say, your case number of 1001 to read more like 1001, you would set it up this way: leading zeros, digits 5, and that's kind of what the output would look like. So it's important to use number fields, numeric fields, when they're needed. I would avoid them when they're not needed. Instead, use a traditional text field. So let's go ahead and remove this, because we didn't need to do that. And what I'm going to do is let's talk more about these. We've also got drop-down boxes. Those are great. We're going to use them for our prefix as well as our stain. We have the ability to do panels, common with stain panels, where you have a stomach panel that maybe would print 3 slides, 1 H&E, 1 maybe CD3, and then 1 whatever other stain you want. But you can customize them. We've also got a pre-built template that's got a bunch of panels in it. And then we've got sequential lettering and numbering. And what we're going to do is use those to allow the user to print multiples with the sample in the block. So let's get started. Let's start. We're going to build this label. So we're going to start with adding a drop-down for prefix. So I'm going to add field, and then I'm going to select drop-down. So let's begin by giving this a logical field name. And because it's prefix, we'll stick with that and call it prefix. The next two locked, that would lock the drop down so we can't select anything. So we'll wait. We'll do that if we need to on the dashboard or on the in the template. Repeat last data, we'll go ahead and select that later if we need it, so we don't need to do anything now. So now let's put in our list of prefixes. We're going to start with S24. The name is what you see in the drop down. The value is what prints on the label. We'll do a C24 and D24, and then we'll just stick with that. Now you can move these up or down, and you can remove them, and I'm going to remove this one because we can always add an option if we need to, but we'll stick with these 3. So I'm going to hit create, and now that appears at the bottom of our form. Generally speaking, you want the counter at the bottom, so I suggest always moving it down. And that way you don't have to click up a bunch, which you'll find yourself doing if you build a template and you're always moving the new one from the bottom up. So remember, counter down, and it's the least amount of steps. So we've got our prefix. Let's go back to add field. Now we want to put our accession number, but I want to use that auto increment option. So I'm going to choose number field, and I'm just going to call it case. And I'm going to stick with that sample value. 1001 seems realistic to me. Sample value is really important. It's what you see in Label Builder. So I don't want to use the word rabbit for a case number or a session number. When I go into Label Builder, it's going to look really silly. It's going to make things difficult. So always use real world data. That's super important. It'll really make things more logical, more intuitive. So I want to check auto increment now. And that's going to, again, jump this number each time we hit print. So let's go ahead and stick with that. I'm going to hit create. Again, I'm going to go to my counter, move down. Okay, now everything's in order. I'm going to go back to add field, and I'm going to add a sample, which is a letter. And I want to do it sequentially so the user can print multiples at once. So I'm going to select sequential letters. I'm going to name this sample. And actually A is a good fit. Max length, I don't need more than 5. You could set that to infinity if you want, but if you don't want to write over things, there's different reasons why you might want to limit it. I'm going to leave it unlocked and go ahead and hit create. Now again, I'm going to move my counter, which is copies, down. And I'm going to now go back to add field. This time I'm going to select sequential numbers for the block number. So I'll name this block. And 4 digits is too many for a block. I think it's normally 1 or 2 or 3 or 4. So let's just use a 1. And I'm going to leave all these alone. And I'm going to hit create. I'm going to again go to our counter, which is copies. I'm going to move it down. So now we've maintained the same order. So we've done prefix, accession, sample, and block. And now what we want to do is a drop down for stain. So I'm going to click add field, and I'm going to find my drop down option. And then I'm going to go ahead and add this, beginning with the field name. Move this up so you can see a little bit better. And now let's jump down to the drop-down content. So H&E is probably going to be our most common stain. So I'm going to put in H&E. And then PAS, and then retic, and that's good for now. So I'm going to remove the other option I don't need, and I'm going to go ahead and create. Now again, I'm going to go to our counter. I'm going to move that down, and now I want to do the patient name. So I'm going to come back here. I'm going to add a text field. And we'll just call it name. Sample value, I want to put something real world, but be considerate to HIPAA, so I'm going to use Peter Pan, my go-to. Max length, you could adjust that. You might want to make it longer if it's because you can get some long names. In the event you have more characters on the label than fits, it'll just write off the label, which is at least you get as much on as you possibly can, which I think is better for identification. So I'm going to create that. Again, I'm going to move my counter down. And at this point, we just need to add a miscellaneous field. Again, you can do whatever you want here. So if you want, if there's specific data you want on the label, this is where you do it. I'm going to put just something random. There, we've got it. So we're going to move this down. And now I think we've got everything. The date we can actually add in Label Builder, and the barcode we'll add in Label Builder. So at this point, I'm going to just save so we can look at our template form. Okay, so here's our form. It looks, well, almost like what I wanted it to look like, but I notice here that the copies is not at the bottom, so I think I forgot to do that with the last two text fields. So I'm going to move that down, and I think everything else looks good. We've got our drop downs, everything looks good. We're not seeing anything on the label because we haven't added it. So what I'm going to do now is fix the copies, and then we'll hop into Label Builder and we'll learn how to add all this information to the label so we can make it look just like we want it to. Okay, so back to the form builder. We go Options drop down, and well, you can't see it, so I'm going to move this down. Move that out of the way. And I'm going to go to Customize Template. Move that back for you. Now, if you recall, I wanted to move the copies down because I forgot to. So we're just going to go here, real simple, move down. Then we're going to go here, move down. And now the form is correct for what I was hoping to have. So at this point, we want to go into Label Builder. So top right corner, Label Builder. Go ahead and click on that. And here we have the QRlogix Label Builder. The first thing I like to do in Label Builder is set our defaults. And that way, once we begin, it's going to use the values that we're hoping. So let's go ahead real quick and click on that, and then I'll show you around the Label Builder area. Background, that's what we see here on the canvas. This is dotted. The other options are white or gridded. I personally like gridded. Use what you want. You can always change it on the fly. Here we have the ability to change the font. Plenty of options, too many really. You can get pretty weird. Font size you can control. I'm going to start with a 30, and then I might decide to change some individual elements. And then position X and Y, that's where it drops the new element onto the label. I'm going to stick with 1 and 1. That's the very top left corner. Some additional options, the barcode. I'm just going to go ahead and set that to data matrix. Data matrix is the most common 2D barcode used in laboratories, especially anatomic pathology. They go through the stainer, they can take a beating. So we're going to use something that's got a good scan rate and holds a lot of data, and that's data matrix. And then we can do the size. And I'll start with a 3. That's a good size for a data matrix barcode on a slide. Generally, they can be bigger than they are on a cassette because we've got a lot more real estate on a slide label than we do a cassette label. Now, if I wanted to add an image, a low definition logo or a warning symbol or something like that, we could do it, and this would pick the size. 50 by 50, that's pretty good for a small microscope slide label like this. So those values look good. I'm going to go ahead and save. Notice my gridded background. And now let's take a look at some of the different features here. We've got our elements that we can add. I'm going to move this down so you can see everything. Barcodes, concatenate functions. A concatenate function is this. It's a nice clean string of data that's all connected. So if we expand data here, it's not going to write over data here, and they're all nice and consistently placed. It's not mumbly pegged together. So it's really important when you want to connect data to use a concatenate function. Below that, we've got the image. We talked about that a minute ago. Static text. A lot of people like to put the name of the laboratory or location at the very bottom. Some states have requirements for that. You could do it as static text if that information never changed. Template fields. Now this is where we're going to find all those different fields here that were on our form. So we've got our prefix, our case, sample, and then you've got the quantity for the sample. You're probably not going to put that on a label. Block, the quantity for the block, probably not going to put that on. Let me move this up a little bit. We can see better. And then you've got copies. You've also got current date here. And if you recall, we've got current date on the label. So I'm just going to grab that now. And that's the format I want. There's some different options there. I'm going to hit insert, and it's going to drop it at this placement. So if we reference our label over here, date is down here. It's a lot smaller. So I'm just going to get it down here for now to kind of get it out of the way. And why not? We're here. Let's reduce the font size. Let's go from, say, a 30 to a 22. We'll come back and revisit all that once we've got the other elements added to the label. So the goal is to build a template or a label here that looks similar to this. So let's address that top line, that concatenate function. If you remember in our choose element dropdown, let me make it so you can see it, we've got the option for concatenate. So let's select that. And now what we need to do is we need to edit the content. What data goes in that string that we see here? So edit content. And now what we do is we select the order and we add any static text. So the first item here is the prefix. So we select prefix. Now I need to add that dash. So I'm going to do it here in our free text box. You could also do spaces. You could do full words, whatever you need, dashes, special characters, you name it. But for now, we're going to put a dash. And notice here, sample values preview. Back to that sample value information we use when we built the form. It's plugging it in as we create it. So we've got our prefix, our dash. Now we need our case number. Then we need another dash. Everything here looks good. After that, we've got our sample. Here it is, sample. No dash, we go right to the block. So we've created A1. Now we need a dash. So there's the dash. Everything's coming together. What are we missing? Actually, I'm going to leave it there because we are probably not going to do the copies. You could, actually, let's do it. So we'll add that one in the event that we make duplicates. Questionable whether you would do this in the lab environment. It really depends on the output you're looking for. But we've created that line we were looking for. This matches that. It all seems to be correct. And so let's go ahead and save it. And now let's insert that data. It's going to go to where the last one was, and it actually changed to their font size. So I'm going to change that back to a 30. And I'm going to put this, I'm about 8 dots over. So this is 300 dots per inch. It's roughly an inch. So figure 8 out of 300 dots is where we're going to start our indentation. And then down the y-axis, 0 is at the top. Let's go like, just 1 down. We want to be right off the top of the label. I'm going to click edit and it's going to move to those values. So we've created our concatenate function for the top line. Let's go back to our choose element, and this time we're going to find a template field. I'm going to hit the drop down to show us the different fields. And now we want to go with the second line in our label, which is name. So I'm going to select name, insert. It went to the previous one, and I'm just going to move it down below. Now, 8 is correct. We got lucky and landed it there. And that looks about right. We'll revisit Y positions once we kind of set them all down. So far, so good. I want to now add my stain and miscellaneous. So I'm going to just go here. I'm going to find stain. I'm going to insert it. And I'm just going to kind of guesstimate where I want it. I want to give enough room for the barcode. I'm going to go back now. I'm going to add that miscellaneous field. Miscellaneous. I'm going to insert that. I'm going to move it down here. And I think you can see things starting to come together with what we're trying to recreate over here. So the one thing that's missing is the barcode. If you recall, our choose element field gives you that option. It went right to data matrix size 3. So I'm going to now edit the content that we want in our slide barcode. So I'm going to do a prefix. This varies. You'll want to decide, obviously, internally what you need. But I'm going to do it this way. It's pretty common. Semicolon is our separator. So I've got prefix, semicolon, case. I'm going to add another semicolon. Then I'm going to go sample. I'm going to add another semicolon, block, another semicolon. I'm going to skip stain. We've got limited number of values we can fit. I'd prefer to get the patient name in there. And that's the really important stuff. Again, you can decide on your own, but we're going to add name. So this is what the barcode would generate based on the sample value we've given it when we built the form fields. I'm going to save this. I'm going to hit insert. And here we've got our barcode. It's good to give some room. Some scanners, especially the older ones, are a little sensitive when you get up on top of other information. So having a barrier around here can increase the scan rate and make it a little more efficient for you. I like what I see here. That's pretty good. It's consistent with what we were gunning for there. I could do some last minute changes. If I wanted to increase this, I think I would do a 34 maybe. So we're going to get a little bit bigger. Patient name, that's questionable. Some long names, like we talked earlier, will print off the end. That's why some people prefer, it makes a lot of sense to do last name, comma, first name, because the last name is going to be more important for identification purposes. But do what makes sense to you and your laboratory. But in this case, I'll just increase it for the fun of it. I'm just going to kind of move things around, make sure they all look good. Last thing I'm going to do is confirm our X position. So this is indented 8, 8, and 9. I'm just going to change that to an 8, hit edit. And now we're looking pretty good. If I wanted to, I could enlarge the font there. I'm good with it. So I'm going to go ahead and hit save. I'm going to save again, and now we're going to hop back to our template form. First glance, I'm pretty pleased with what I see, but we'll know better when we add some real-world data. So let's go with our case number, and let's go with starting values. Generally speaking, A and 1 and 1 and 1, unless you have other values that are more common. If you always do 2, then you want to put that as a 2. So I put in the information that doesn't change first. And I included that because we set it to auto increment. So we're going to set our starting case number and then the values we want it to return to after we print. I'm going to save this, and you'll see why when I print. Now that auto incremented and these returned here, because if it's most often A, I just want to tab right through it, but I also have the ability to write over it. So if there's more common values, make those your starting values. Patient name is going to change, so you probably want to leave that open. Miscellaneous, if it's, something that doesn't change frequently, Dr. Jones, something like that, you can lock it out. And this is really powerful here. Our lock feature allows you to lock in values that you don't want to tab through. If you're going to be S24 with all your work for the day, lock it. The case number is set to auto increment, so you don't necessarily have to do much there. So go ahead and lock that. Now these values could change. Stain, well, we're not going to jump around from slide to slide. You're going to set up your H&E stainer and you're going to do all your H&Es at once, and then you might do your specials or something else. So we can generally lock our stain out. Name, again, that's going to change. Miscellaneous, lock that out. If we're solely using this, we can lock out copies. So again, that's kind of variable. You got to figure out whether that makes sense or not for your situation. I'm going to hide these locks now, and now I've got a pretty darn efficient form. So let's test it out. Let's go case number 1002, and I want to print sample A and B. So I'm going to put a value of 2, and I want to print block 1, and I want to print block 2. So that's 2 times 2 is 4. And we'll call this Marco Polo. And I'm going to jump to the print button and print. And we see here in the output these 4. So 1002A1, 1002A2, 1002B1, 1002B2. So that's it. That's what we were looking for. It's going to jump back here to the first open value for this new case number. We could do the same values, and we could say this is Minnie Mouse, and then go ahead and print, and now it's going to print these 4 additional slides using the same sequence. So you can kind of adjust as needed, get it dialed in, but this is really the goal I was looking for, was to reproduce this label here and have the ability to do sequential lettering and numbering. So that concludes our video on data entry templates. Thank you for coming out and watching, and please check out our other videos and give us a like if you want to stay in touch and see more training tutorials as they become available. But thanks again for watching.